Hello and welcome to Frozen Frontiers. Welcome back. Had some issues with the truck this week. It's always fun when your only vehicle that works breaks down, but luckily this time it was something that I can at least plane flying over right now. Pretty cool. Kind of loud though. Well, what happened is the drive shaft broke for the four-wheel drive on the front wheels. And if you were wondering what happens when that happens while you're driving at 60 miles per hour on the highway, this is what it sounds like. Now keep in mind, I was only driving at like 15 at the time I took that video. So at 60 miles per hour, it's pretty dramatic. The whole car shakes a bunch, and I shake my camera to, show you what that's like, but it's got image stabilization, so it wouldn't be dramatic. And also the starter went out. Well, I believe it's going out, and it could either be the starter or the starter solenoid, so I just got both. If the starter solenoid isn't making contact properly, then it'll exhibit kind of the same symptoms that I'm having. But sometimes it'll just click and not try and start at all. Batteries are charged up enough to start it, and I know that because if I hook up the block heater and let it run for an hour or two, it'll turn it over. So it just seems like the starter's getting weak, and I really don't blame it because I kind of abused it this year. My bad. But yeah, so what happened when it broke, it looks like it broke in the housing itself of the CV joints and the boots for it. So this is what it actually looks like. So internal piece right there is just completely gone. Yeah, all sorts of busted up. Got wear marks, a little tiny wear mark there. So that's really cool. Anyway, I've got the replacement part for it right here. In that box, you can actually see the other one right there too, as well as the starter. So we'll get those replaced today. Show you what that's all about and what that's like. It's really not too bad. Not too bad at all. To do that, I've got it's pretty warm out today. It's like 40 degrees, so all this snow is starting to get really wet. So I put down a board just for me to lay on. And it's really, that's all the space I'm gonna need down there. So it's 8 bolts. It's super difficult to get this drive shaft off. It's 8 bolts. And maybe you can see, had some branding done to my truck here. There we go. Frozen Frontiers, baby. But yeah, let's jump into what that looks like. So here they are side by side, new and old. The only difference I can really see is that this new one has a different joint there. I think it should be fine. Yeah, you saw before, but the inside of that is just completely torn apart. Inside of this looks great. It's got a joint in there, so this also moves a lot less clanky and holds its shape a lot better than this one does. This one just kind of, you roll it around and it's like, it's floppy as a fish on a beach. It's great. This one over here, she's kind of floppy too, but not like a fish on a beach. It's more like a hot dog that hasn't been cooked. yeah. So let's take this guy down there. Get her put on. Gotta make sure that I don't get any grease or dirt, I should say, on this end piece here. So let's put that right there. For now, and I'll climb under there and get her up under the truck. So that drive shaft goes from right there, right by the front diff, and goes back to here, which is the transfer case. So one part of it bolts in to these 4 spots. The other part bolts into those 4 spots. I found that those are 8mm. These I think were 10. We'll see when I get them put in. Face the camera over here so y'all can see what I'm doing. Like right there. So we're gonna take this piece, and it needs to go up on top of here, up to there, and then this piece comes down into those grooves, which maybe I should have put those in first. Cap coming off. Looks like that cap's coming off. Yep. Be careful with these caps because they can fall off while you're doing this. Kind of makes it a little bit of a pain. If you set it, there's some little teeth right here to set it into. It'll make it a lot easier while you're trying to get this screwed in. Because the inside of these brackets touches that bearing, you know, make sure they're clear of any rocks or anything that's going to cause damage to that. Then all you really have to do, get one of the screws going in on one side. I don't normally wear gloves, but I got tired of washing my hands yesterday, so I decided to make a pair of gloves into my work gloves, which, you know what, all right. So you get that in there. I'm actually going to take this off of here so it's easier to just thread them on by hand. I'm going to wait to tighten them a lot until the other side's on too. There's probably a torque spec for this. I don't know it. I know how tight they were when I took them off. I can try and get it to that tight. Okay. Okay. That's tight enough. So, I mean, it's done. That's it. The only thing left is that there was a plate, skid plate that goes right here. Need to get that put back on. But then the other thing you can see underneath my head here, being my headrest, is the starter. So the starter is just right up here. It's covered in oil. As you can see, the oil pan right there, just absolutely coated in oil. Need to get that leak fixed. The starter, just right up there. So let's get all my stuff moved over there. It looks like there are 2. Oh, it didn't hold up. Dang. So starter bolts. It doesn't look like there's one on the top side. Looking for any teeth here that might be broken off. Looks fine. 17 it is. So I'm trying to debate. I really should unplug the batteries. Yep. Yeah, I need to unplug the batteries before I do this, because if I arc that connection, it might be bad with all this oil sitting here. So, go do that. So, 17. Just gonna loosen these up a bit. And shimmy the thing. Okay, so the connections we have here, there's only two that are holding it on. So there's the little one that goes on the smaller post, and of course bigger one goes on the bigger post right there. So balance this on top of here so that it can at least hold some of the weight. That is a tiny, 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 tiny screw thing holding it on there. Maybe it's actually a 17 as well. Let's see, huh? Looks like it is. Now the small one, take the small one off first. I'm not putting all the weight on that big one. It looks smaller than an 8. Let's throw the 8 on there just to see. Oh, it is the 8. I had to replace one of these in an F-150 probably like 4 or 5 years ago. They're pretty easy to do. You just have to know where they are and have the patience to take the bolts out. But other than that, it's a pretty easy job. I think I'm going to put the cabling on last, so I'm going to kind of move it up and out of the way while I get the new one in. Oh, don't fall on me, please. And thank you. Get one of these in. While I'm tightening this down, I'm looking up into the side of the engine here just to see if there's any other places that may be leaking oil. So the exhaust manifold is this up here. Still a little bit warm from when I drove it earlier. And I don't see any what looks like new oil up there. So shouldn't be any oil leaks up there. The only place I really see fresh oil is right here on the oil pan. And I'll show you where it leaks from. So right there, that circle, that's where the dipstick goes in. And it leaks from that. It leaks straight from that dipstick. So, but then I'm gonna check these connections, just make sure they don't wiggle at all. No wiggle there. No wiggle there. So that should be installed and ready to go for a test run. Now, just to put into perspective, when I talked to, so I had initially thought that this was a problem with the wheel itself, which is over that way. And I don't have like a wheel press or a bearing press. I don't have a lot of that stuff to do that kind of work. So I called a mechanic that can actually drive out to you. And he was quoting me 2.5 hours for the wheel. And then I asked him if he could pick up this for me while he was in town, since this was what I was originally on my way into town to get. And he said that this was going to be an 1.5 hour job to replace this. You just watch me do the whole thing from start to finish, and this is starting with this axle here. Not the axle. Come on, I need to get this stuff right. The drive shaft. Starting with the drive shaft, he was quoting me 1.5 hours for the drive shaft and 1.5 hours for this. His rate's $250, but that's because he comes on site. He can charge more. Makes sense. And I'm perfectly happy with doing that if it's something that I can't do myself. I had to apologize to him after I found out that this was actually the issue here. But I think my entire family, really, my dad, I mean, first off, growing up, I was around all this stuff all the time. So while I may not, understand the internal workings of this guy, I at least understand enough to say, okay, there's 3 bolts here, 2 bolts there. Let's take off the 2 bolts, unplug the batteries first, of course. Take off the 3 bolts, switch out the part. So, I mean, I might not be able to rebuild this thing, but I can at least put it back together and do my own fixing stuff. This was $240. I can take the core back and get $80 back. And the core just means the old part. So, take this part back to O'Reilly's, get a new one. Got the new one. Get some money back. I don't think that there was a core for the drive shaft. I'll have to look online and see if there was. But the drive shaft, literally, it's 8 bolts. You saw that took me like 10 minutes, maybe. This took longer just because I didn't already have the piece off. There was some finagling I had to do and finding the bolt up there. But, I mean, we're at 51 minutes now, and I've been rattling on for a couple minutes. And this is with me going out to get other tools and unplug the batteries, all that jazz. So, I mean, I saved myself 3 hours worth of labor, which is $750, just by knowing how to take some bolts off. That's pretty much it. So I thank my family and my brothers, especially the last few years. I've had a lot of time with all of them to just work on stuff and keep that knowledge fresh and learn new things too, of course. So while I'm down here, I also like to check out the just the supporting stuff for the suspension. Make sure that nothing looks loose, that nothing looks broken or bent. And I mean, at a quick glance, everything looks okay. I haven't really done a ton of checking, but let's get all our tools out of here and the part, start her up and see how it goes, and then we'll put the skid plate back on down there. I think that I hooked everything back up. Let's try her out. Pretty dirty out here, and it's only going to get worse over the next probably month and a half would be my guess. It's been, I don't know if I'd say a dry winter, because we did get a lot of rain, but that's the thing, we got a lot of rain. So while I was here, I figured I'd tell you guys how starters actually work. So there's this big flywheel inside of the engine that has a bunch of teeth on it. You can see the teeth here on this guy. I didn't really bother checking the other one to see if these were worn out. I mean, they do look a little worn to me, but I don't know if they're actually like worn out or not. Anyway, so what happens is your signal comes in to your starter, and then it just starts turning this motor inside. Well, the motor, when it turns, this entire sprocket right here pops out. So the flywheel actually sits like out here. This entire thing will pop out enough to where it starts grabbing the flywheel, and it'll spin the flywheel. That flywheel spins your engine starts turning over. Pretty simple mechanism here. When they start to go out, the motor inside doesn't turn hard enough or fast enough, or if it's too cold, the oil inside of the engine can be gumming up the entire engine, making it harder for this to spin. And the reason that I'm not very surprised that this one may be going bad is because at the start of this winter, Natasha here, good old truck, she was running really cold, and she was running really rough too. So starting it was kind of a process where I'd have to come out and try and kick it over for sometimes 15 to 20 minutes to get it started. And that is really, really bad on starters when you do that. Because they warm up too much inside. I mean, there's a ton of electricity going here. When you talk about batteries having 700 cranking amps, that's 700 cranking amps. This is the crank right here. So all that power comes into here, and it can just rip this motor apart if it gets too warm, because the internal components get malleable and they start to just jam up against each other, and expansion, contraction, all that jazz. So yeah, if this is going out, I wouldn't be really all that surprised. That is also why I got the starter solenoid too. I'm not going to bother replacing it right now. I just will if I see any issues. I'll show you where that is really quick in the truck. So coming up past the driver's side here, the starter solenoid is over here on the passenger side. It is Should have just taken you guys off of the stick. It is this post, these posts right here. If I were to arc this post to that post, it would start starting. That would pass the signal through the solenoid and into the truck itself. But, I mean, I think that that's it for this video. I just wanted to show my woes and show my mechanical expertise, as flimsy as it is. But yeah, thanks for sticking around. I hope this video was educational. Other than the couple problems that I run into, truck's been working great. I've really liked this truck. It's a workhorse. She'll put up with anything. She puts up with me, so that's more than a lot of people can say. But anyway, wherever you're at, I hope you're having the best time you can and making progress towards whatever goals you've got. Have yourself a good one.